awareness creation. On page 24, 4.5 billion naira debt dispute. Paralex Bank challenges experte over freezing funds by Abuja court. Oyo Obas will support Ladoja as council chairman. Olugbon assures Makinde. That story is on page 24. And on page 25, aftermath of Oyo attack, Southwest State security agencies strategize, intensify border surveillance. And that story is on page 25. Robust investments key to urban governance, says Lagos Monarch. Arrangements underway to implement resolutions of Southwest Governors Meeting. That story is on page 26. And on 27, NAF airstrikes kill over 40 terrorists in Borno. Gunmen kill policeman, abduct Chinese in Oyo. NDLEA arrest wanted drug kingpin, Kamo, 12 years after murder of 3 officers. And lastly on this page, we have police arrest 3 for murder of housewife, 6 children in Kano. All stories on page 27. Let's take some of these sports stories on the back page. We have AFCON 2025. Chell hails Eagles' resilience. Tinubu hails team. AFCON bronze. Why we lost to Nigeria. And that's coming from Egypt coach. Para badminton, Bolaji wins gold at Egypt International. And that's all on the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And talking of the sports stories and, Nigeria eventually coming out third in the match. I mean, we just have to say congratulations to the team. Moving on to the Nation newspaper this morning. On the front page, we have recapitalization, 20 banks in race to escape CBN hammer. Financial institutions weighing options of downgrading status. Arco Group hails Uku on global recognition by Marcus Wu is Wu. And that story is on page 3. Oyo gives 25 million naira cash to families of slain forest guards. And that's on page 4. Banks offer 2.7% interest on savings, charge 60% on loans. And that story is on page 13. Killer suspect of woman, 6 children in police net. ICPC files charges against Ozekome over ownership of Useni's UK house. I got disputed property as gift for election petition cases. SEN insists. We have no record of passport used in UK land registry, says immigration. That story is on page 3. And lastly, on the front page of the Nation newspaper is a story on page 2. Brave Senegal stun host Morocco to slain second AFCON title. And that's all on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Taking some of the inside stories, we have killer suspect of woman, 6 children in police net. Anti-kidnapping operations will be extended beyond Kogi, Kwara, says IG. Why Ondo will vote Tinubu in 2027 by ex-speaker, that story is on page 21. Why Northern Nigeria must put education first. That's on page 25. Nigeria's pervasive culture of impunity. We have that also on the same page. And on the back page, we have, there's no sports story here. Well, that's all on the Nation newspaper this morning. We'll be right back after the commercial break and, of course, weather reports. Please stay with us. Staying with us. Yes, it's still AM120, and this morning we will be analyzing the renewed agreement between federal government and ASU. Last week, the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, signed a renewed agreement marking a significant breakthrough after about 16 years of negotiations. The federal government, effective January 1, 2026, includes the agreement, effective January 1, 2026, includes a 40% salary increase for academic staff, improved pension benefit, and enhanced university funding for research, libraries, and staff development. While the key highlights also include professors retiring at 70 with full annual salary pensions and the establishment of a National Research Council with 1% GDP funding. So many, issues, so many things to talk about in that agreement itself. To do justice to this topic this morning, we have an educationist and a very active ASU member. He is Professor Adams Onuka. Good morning, Prof. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you, sir.
Happy to be here too.
Indeed. Let's start with the current agreement. Let's look at both agreements now. The 2009 agreement and the 2025 federal government and ASU agreement. What's the difference?
There's no difference. In fact, the difference is that this one is worse than what was. Actually, there were tables that, they were, when the agreement was done, it was agreed that there were certain things for money's sake, they had two tables. We were only implementing the table one, and it was to be renewed, renegotiated every, 5 years. But that was not done. So I would say there's virtually no, it's not a renewed agreement, it's an agreement. They are just consummating what they have done. If they have been doing what they ought to have done, what we are saying now, these things will be child play to what ought to be.
So you said this one is worse.
It's worse in the sense that when you look at when you take indices, okay, what ought to have been done, and it is not done, and you take the indices of inflation, for instance, you may, if you go back to that agreement and you begin to use, the indicators for that time and the indicators of this time to compare, you will discover that this one would not be better than what it ought to be, even as at 2009, per that agreement. Okay. So take the indices of inflation and other things into consideration. That is what I'm saying. When we look at budget, we look at certain things and we say, oh, there is increment. That is on the surface.
So are you saying the impact would not even be greatly felt, talking of the economic situation currently?
Well, I wouldn't greatly, yes, but it will be felt in the sense that at least there is an improvement over what is being done now. But I'm saying that if you were to compare, using the indices of that time and this time, and then you now equate you will discover that it could not have been better. But since that was not done, and
you think that was not done? I mean, for ASU,
for instance, let me,
ASU and federal government sitting together and coming up with this new agreement,
you
think they would not have
taking
considered
they
all these
did,
factors into consideration?
but what I'm saying is that 40% increments in salary is not what, if you have been doing the thing over and over, you would have done it more than 3 times. And so what you are now doing, you are basing it on the 2009 something, and you are just improving, where there were little improvement and this thing. I'm saying they are not. For instance, take Qatar. If you take Qatar and they just say, you just say Qatar is about these things. If you know what the lecturers do, when I'm in active service, I attend every year more than 6 conferences. And they they impact on my teaching. Because you go there, you go internationally, you know what they are doing. You go nationally, you know what is being done in ABU, you know what is being done in UNN, you know what is being done in Calabar, all those things. And then you just oppose and you use it to improve your teaching.
Talking about what
now, what I'm saying now, if you look at the amount they are putting for Qatar, which is just, of which conference is just part of it, is not what it ought to be. Because if you say 470,000 and I attend 6 conferences, even within Nigeria, will that take care of it?
Is it 470,000 per year? Or?
It is per year, it's not per month. So these are the things we will look at and say, that is why I'm saying, because people are just looking, when you mention money, the trillion of today may not be comparable to the 500 billion of 2010. It may be even less if you equate them using the same indices, the indices of today and that, and you equate, you will discover it may not. So this is that was why I was saying that the thing we are looking at, and as if it was too fantastic, and people are just emphasizing here and there. When people on our platform, when people begin to analyze it, you look at it and you know that.
And that's why we have called you here today. Let's look at the analysis, analyze it for us. But before we analyze, these key features of the agreement, just as we started this conversation this morning off camera, it was like, what do lecturers do?
Yeah.
Apart from lecturing.
Yeah.
When we talk about increase in benefits, remunerations, salaries, and people ask, okay, what exactly are you doing for us to say, I mean, you're going on strike how many times in a year? Why are we giving you this much salary? So what do lecturers do apart from going into the classroom?
Even when they are, you see, even when they are on strike, the only thing they don't do is teaching. They do a lot of administrative. There is not, when, you see, let me take examination, for instance. When you conduct examination in the university system, it is not just the lecturer. People just think the lecturer. You will mark, they will moderate, you will meet on it to make sure that neither the lecturer neither favors student, none, punish student for no reason. Now, that is that. You do a lot serious. They impute. In fact, you impute your thing on the porter. Now, you do admission. It is not something. You meet. Somebody will collate, and then there is meeting. There are several meetings, disciplinary meeting of the Senate. That you do it at the department, at the faculty, and then the Senate before results are actually. That is why people don't know that it is very difficult for any lecturer to, oppress, because it goes through all of these things, and the results are not given out until Senate has approved. If Senate doesn't approve, because there people may raise objection and see, oh, why is this? Why is this mass failure? Why is this, to make sure that nothing goes wrong. There are disciplinary cases, okay? There are other meetings they do. There are conferences. There are research. They do consulting on behalf of the university. So you see this gamut. And then a lecturer, what people don't understand is that you may, a 1 hour lecture, if you are really a lecturer, a 1 hour lecture would have taken you about 4 hours to prepare. And you come to the class to deliver. So you supervise students from undergraduate to PhD. So that is a lot of work because you have to read all their papers and make sure, and you correct. And you say that person is not working?
Okay, let's look at the key features of the agreement now. Talking of, you've mentioned the salary increase. We also talked about the allowances. You mentioned Qatar earlier, and although you said it's not enough, but for now, I think the agreement, the leadership of ASU have agreed on, this current agreement now. But let's look at the professorial cadre allowance.
Yeah.
And it says a new allowance for senior academics with professors receiving 1.74 million naira annually and readers receiving 840,000 naira annually.
Yeah.
Let's look at this development. For professors, you're a professor.
Unfortunately, I won't be taking it because I'm retired.
So, well, I mean,
no,
it's good you fought for other professors.
No, we are.
In
fact, I'm still saying that when you look at it, divide this 1 by 12, and you discover that it's just barely 100 and something, not even
but looking at the
per month.
But looking at the 2009 agreement,
now
the difference is it not? Is the gap not much? Is it not clear enough?
I am telling you, it's clear. It's not. You see, when I said there was no much improvement, it doesn't mean that there was no improvement. This perhaps was not in the 9. But the thing is that what professors do, actually, if you know what the equivalent of a professor in the civil service earn, the professor in those days has a secretary. They no longer have secretary. This is the thing. You now do the work of your secretary. You do the work, a number of work other people. You have to drive. A director in the ministry doesn't drive himself.
Well, can we say this improvement would give motivation to professors currently?
I hope it will help to stem a little bit, the urge to japa. Yes.
Okay.
Do you know how many have japa?
We'll come to that. We'll talk about brain drain after this commercial break. Okay. Please stay with us.
Win up to 5 million naira and other exciting prizes in the Golden Morn Golden Hunt promo. Buy any 30 gram or 45 gram promo pack. Look inside for a unique code. Dial *8011*1#. Follow the prompts to enter your unique code to win big. Promo ends April 15th, 2026. Golden Morn. Make every day golden.
All right, thank you very much for staying with us. Still analyzing the renewed agreement between ASU and the federal government. Before we went on that break, Prof mentioned brain drain and how this agreement would most likely reduce the number of professionals, lecturers, trooping out of the country. And Prof, do you think this agreement would have any effect, talking of brain drain we are currently experiencing in Nigeria?
Definitely it will. It is not everybody who wants to go. Some will go, no matter what you give. But there are majority of us, in fact, that is the reason we are fighting, to make sure that something that takes people home will enable them to think less of going outside when they continue to compare. When some people go Even in Uganda, you go there, they pay you how many dollars in a month? And when you know now that even the Naira's value had gone down, these are the things that make people want to go. But there are those who want to stay because they believe they want to give back to the nation. But when they can no longer feed themselves, they will go. But with this, there may be those who don't want to go, who will now say, I want to stay. Even if they were now taking, there are people who, after some years, they just resign, they retire and say, and they take up appointments where they are professors. So, but it can reduce it, because if they keep it and if they are implementing, the fact is that sometimes you don't. I want to tell you something. As I visited, I joined cooperative society in my this thing, but they did certain things. Then I began to analyze, and I have tactically withdrawn because I discovered what I didn't know before. Because of what they did, I now discover that it were better I was putting the money in the savings. Because with the little interest that comes to the saving, I will gain more. I was actually, gaining less, or gaining nothing. And because I wasn't taking, I was just putting in so that if I have reason to say I want to withdraw money, I can withdraw in emergency. But they say that one will not get any interest. And I now look, I said I'm losing. So in that, but I did not do that analysis before. In like manner, when you are content, when you are somebody who with little you have, you are content, you are not going to compare. But when what you are taking home cannot take you home, then you begin to compare what others are doing. It is then you look outwards. Because if, for instance, you have children and they eat 3 times a day, they have those 3 square meals, you will find out they may not be looking out what other people are doing. They will be satisfied. But when they cannot, it's when they now compare themselves to the others.
So you're saying the new developments now
may reduce brain drain to some extent, especially those who do not have the urge to go out, are satisfied to serve the nation to the best of their ability with the very little they have, as long as that little is meeting their minimal needs.
All right, Prof, when earlier you mentioned that the new agreement is not really as good as you expect it to be. But don't you think, or do you think it captures the mind of ASU General, talking about, I mean, you earlier said you mediate between ASU and the institution, so you can understand the mind of ASU. You know what ASU has been fighting for. Do you think this agreement overall captures the mind of the association? Or the association just agreed, talk of let my people go, let us be.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yes, at least what has taken place is that as we say, okay, something has happened. And I think the president, even the president of ASU, I'm not talking of the president of the nation, also said it is with measure optimism that they want to see that it is implemented. And of course, I believe that they have also agreed that at some point in time, it will be renegotiated. And if that is the case, now you give the benefit of the doubt. You say, okay, things that has been lingering, something is beginning, they say they don't have all the money, so this is what we can give. And this is not what, 40% was not what they were asking for.
What were they asking for?
Definitely a review, a total review and rehaul, because the thing has been lingering on. Right. And 40% wouldn't have been the thing from 2009 till now. So that is the case. If you go, there are places people do the analysis and say it is a pottery song. But then, whatever it is, whether it meets the minimal need or not, is an improvement in the sense that a number of things had come into the agreement and it has been signed officially. hoping that it will be implemented to the letter. And if that is the case, it's a basis for hope that there will be further improvement in the future.
All right, let's continue to look at the key features now. Let's look at research funding. Establishment of a National Research Council to fund research with at least 1% of Nigeria's GDP. What do you make of that?
Yes, I have been advocating for research funding and research bank because a lot of research go on and they end up on a paper. In fact, besides the university, go to the research institute. I went to CRIN some 20 or so years ago, and NIHOT. If you see the quantum of research output that has come, the example that is not being utilized. We don't, if what our research institute do and what the university research outputs are put into consideration, we won't be this. Then, in fact, I wonder why consultancy government was not asked to put at least 50% of government consultancy should be undertaken by Nigerian universities. They go bring people and they sponsor. They now come to the research fund. It is one thing to have a research council with a funding. Now, if they now, until the whole, the instrument setting up this research council and how the disbursement will be made is out, it is not yet uhuru, because it is one thing to set up things and then use bureaucracy to say is this, is that, and then, the people who will be administering it, you have a board, a governing board, you have those things, and then a lot of, bureaucracy goes in and takes a lot of money from it. If you spend money, half of what comes in or a quarter of what comes in there on bureaucracy, and before you begin to distribute, how many universities do we have in Nigeria? And because people will begin to apply. Look at TED Fund. They are supposed to be researching. Before it is not too long ago that they now began to fund research.
Is that not also talking about university autonomy? I know this agreement also talks about it. But how do you think university can begin to strengthen itself? And I'm also relating this to the research funding now. Not 100% reliance on the federal government, support.
Even these things, it is no longer 100% from federal government. This kind of thing, some of the allowances are to be sourced internally. They are to be funded from internally generated revenue. So that is that. You see, when we talk of funding, for instance, I am an advocate of an all-stakeholder funding. There should be a formula that you and I contribute to the funding of the university system so that the child of the poor can get educated. You see some of these things. So if internally generated revenue will be used to fund part of this, it all means that some of the fees we have to increase. And that may put away, and that was the fight of us, that nobody should go out of school because he has no money. So there are many things. The thing is that I think we have just submitted a research funded by Tenford, and we're giving them a model that can get every. So you also not just funding, the utilization must be monitored.
How many percent are universities required to fund themselves with? I'm talking of collaboration with federal government now. How many percent is the federal government, supporting, and how many percent is the institutions required to draw?
It is not question of percentage. Okay. The government takes care of certain things, but with this, some components, I have not gone through those components, but I think this kata is likely and probably the allowance is likely to come from internally generated revenue.
Not from the federal government.
Not all of it coming from the federal. Part will come from. Then, you see, what I'm saying, when you say the retiring at 70 has that portion of 2009 has been effective since I think mid 2011. But the payment, the 100% salary going is not. If I tell you what I earn as a pension, it's not up to 1/3 of what I was taking before I left. So let's see. I hope this one will ameliorate it, because when we ask, they continue to say it's because government has not bring their own counterpart. I hope they will do that. But the funding is that if every stakeholder, like 1% of my salary should go, if I volunteer, 1% of my salary, 1% of your salary, and everybody. If you take 10,000, it means 1% is very insignificant, but it goes. If I take 1 million, my own 1% will not be your own 1% anyway, but it's still 1% across board. But the money, the absolute will not be the same thing. That, I believe, everybody contribute, because education is important. I kept saying it. If education were as costly as it is now, a person like myself will not be sitting here to discuss what we are discussing. And if I have that opportunity, I don't think anybody should lose that opportunity.
But we do not see people having such opportunity anymore.
That is what I'm saying. So that is why we must make sure that the child of the poor has access to education.
But do you think ASU is also fighting for what you just said right now?
That was why we were fighting for that.
You were, but no longer fighting for it.
We're fighting for it because that we didn't want the burden to be put and say you can do this way, you can source your money from there and there. We wanted, the suggestion, the 10th fund was a product of ASU agitation. And somehow, that was why I think by 2011 or 13, that they now make it a 10th fund, tertiary university. I mean tertiary, and now tertiary means the polytechnic, the colleges of education, and what have you. The monotechnics are also having part of that fund, which was a product of ASU struggle. Now, no, we are not bothered because the child of the poor Nigerian will benefit. The people who are benefiting are Nigeria, and our fight is that Nigeria must be better. And we know that the education is the bedrock of any development in any nation. In fact, right in 1977 says the weight of a nation is determined by the quality of its educated people. So that is why we must really get ourselves educated. And now, thank God, we are talking of entrepreneurship, we are talking of transformative quality education, functional quality education that will make people to be able to get employed by themselves without. But the unfortunate thing is Nigeria, no matter what they know, what they do, they still want to, I discuss that with people sometimes, they still want to get employment from government.
Prof, I want us to look at education now. It's good you mentioned it, and let's look at generally in Nigeria, education and the quality of education in Nigeria. How would you rate it?
You see, when you talk of quality does not happen without some ingredients that has to come together. Now, the quality of primary school will determine the quality of education anywhere. Because the foundation, if I had a good primary foundation, that is why I am here today. if that foundation is not done, I think the point is that the teachers who taught us, I don't know how, I was small, so I don't know how well paid they were, but they were dedicated. And of course, that will be fortunate. They were satisfied.
Do you still see that dedication in
to do it. There are people, no matter what they get, because of insatiation, they will want to get more, and so they put hand here, they put hand there, put hand there, they put hand there. I frown at that. If I see any colleague who does, they know I frown at it. But you know there are bad eggs everywhere. So if you say some people, it's not everybody. I think majority of the people are dedicated.
So what about those who are not dedicated? What's demotivating them from, putting
the
their all for,
the fact is that...
And also, we've been talking about teachers not being well remunerated for as long as I can remember. You talked about primary school. Even while I was in primary school also, we hear instances where people talk about how teachers are poorly paid. Mm-hmm. Why is this so? And how can we make it better? We know this is one of the things ASU is fighting for also, but how can we make it better? And how can we also ensure that the government, we do not put interest do not solely lie on a particular profession, leaving the teachers behind?
If you permit me, I've said it before, and I'm not shying away from repeating. I had the privilege to be sponsored to South Korea in 2016. And one of the discoveries is that in 1965, and I know this because they came here doing Lucas Punch to fund themselves. We call them Kora. Then we didn't know it's Korean, and we just called them Kora. I was in a village in Edo State, and they came for sponging. Now, when I got there, what they told us at those times, they accepted that they were behind us, and that what they did, all those people were dedicated. They were nationalistic. So when they go to anywhere, they borrowed money and exported their manpower. So salary of those manpower, part of it was used to pay the debt. But that is not the thing. Why are they now advanced? They have what they call South Korea African Cooperation. All Africa put together, a country is, funding them. Is that good? It's not good enough. A country that was behind Nigeria in 1965, education was the reason. Their own education is that the best brains go for teaching. It is a policy. And the teachers are best paid. So I now taking Ryden's assertion and looking at this practice and the development in Korea, I agree with Ryden that the wealth of a nation is determined by the quality of its educated people. And because they put priority on education, they advance. All we need to is to be serious about it. It is not where the private institution can augment.
Where does the seriousness start from?
Huh?
Where does the seriousness start from?
Is the serious...
From the home, from the government,
from
the teachers, from the students, where?
You see, well, something will motivate people. Now, when I was in primary school, the teachers were highly regarded. That probably is the motivation for their dedication. They had respect. But at some point, some people didn't, you go to the school to fight a teacher because the teacher has either asked your son to stand up, not even beating. And you say, who is the teacher? Doesn't know you are somebody like this, you are somebody like that. And these are the things that demotivate the teachers. And when you think, okay, I don't take much, and then people are looking down on me, you want to leave if you have the opportunity of living. And so if you don't, you get demotivated, you put minimal effort to get your minimum pay. So these are some of these things. But if the government and the parents accord the teacher what they ought to accord the teacher, then the government, the parent, the teacher, the student, the community are to put hands together to ensure that we have what's the role of the community? The community, in those days when we were growing up, we were children of the community. So any child or any parent who goes to school to, harass a teacher just because the teacher speaks or does anything not seriously wrong, then if the community, talk to that person, talk senses into that person, the others will not go. That is the role of community. The role of the community also is that they can come together and do something for the school, like the alumni do for their schools.
All right, Prof.
So then government should fund, parents should contribute, everybody should put something. Once we put funding and the fund is properly utilized, because it is one thing to pump money inside somewhere, it is another thing to use it appropriately. If there is no misapplication, if priority are given to things that will aid the impartation of knowledge, then it has begun. And quality will come, and the development will result.
Prof, we seem to talk more of tertiary institutions, leaving behind the primary sector, primary institutions, primary schools. Why do we lay so much emphasis on tertiary institutions, and who are those fighting for primary, at the primary level?
Well, they have...
Which we understand is supposed to be the basics. It's supposed to be the most important aspect also. But we do not see that happening. We just talk about tertiary.
Because, you see,
why is that?
Tertiary institutions, no matter the number, are still far less than the primary institutions. I know so the people in tertiary can come together and shout. The people in primary, they come together too, but the kind of shout is not talk. And again, there's the federal government has a lot to do with tertiary. The state government has a lot to do because that is where you get the bulk of people who will support them.
But when we talk about national development, is the primary institution also not supposed to be major focus?
It is. That is what I'm saying. I mentioned it before you even mentioned it, that primary, secondary cannot be neglected. And funding, as far as I'm concerned, what applies to the tertiary institution in terms of funding must apply to a primary institution in terms of funding and in terms of monitoring. And of course, I don't think even the monitoring is being done very well. Particularly if you go around, I have studied the difference between the quality or the difference is between the reason for quality in private and public primary education. And I discovered that the major difference is that the owner of the primary school is almost present. So everything is done as it ought to be done. Otherwise, in many of the primary schools, they don't have qualified teachers, yet they do well because their owner is there. It pulls everything and helps and makes sure, monitors. But, the owner of public primary school or public institution is either in Abuja or in Ibadan. And even in Ibadan, they won't go to Egbeda. So the kind of monitoring is also there. So that is why I say when you are talking of quality, it's a function of funding,
But what
a
about,
function
the,
of
what
funding.
about the public primary schools? You're talking about the privates now.
No, I'm
the
talking.
owners are there
Yes.
monitoring their
Yeah,
activities.
that is what I'm saying.
But what about the public primary school, which is supposed to be, I mean, not everyone can afford a private institution,
Yes.
private school. The public is supposed to be a place where everyone should have access
That
to.
is what I'm
Every
saying.
child should have
Listen,
access to basic education.
I only compare that.
Okay.
I am saying that they also try to fund it. The funding, if you pay the teachers well and you monitor them and ensure that they do what they are doing and there is sanction. You see, we don't sanction people. We should sanction people. If somebody failed to come to school or somebody come to the school with material is selling, and is well paid, then you can sanction. But if you don't pay him regularly, if you don't pay them regularly, if you don't pay them well, then you can sanction them because they must survive. Because sometimes, like you give 20,000 to somebody to come to school, and he eats from there, he transports himself from there, he pays rent. How is that feasible in the present Nigeria? And it does happen.
All right, Prof. I want us to talk about the issue of out-of-school children also. But before we do that, we have a commercial break. And when we return, we'll visit that. Please stay with us.
He didn't mention.
Win up to 5 million naira and other exciting prizes in the Golden Morn Golden Hunt promo. Buy any 30-gram or 45-gram promo pack. Look inside for a unique code. Dial *8011*1#. Follow the prompts to enter your unique code to win big. Promo ends April 15th, 2026. Golden Morn. Make every day golden.
Thank you very much for staying with us. We're still talking about the renewed agreement between federal government and ASU, and also looking at the education system in Nigeria, and of course, the challenges we are facing, talking of education, lecturer issue, primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions, and how we can better the lot of education in Nigeria. Before we went on that break, we mentioned out-of-school children, and I want us to visit that because we keep talking about the primary schools, secondary schools, tertiary institutions, what lecturers want, the money raising this and that, but we do not talk about children who are out of school. What are we doing about children who are out of school? Earlier you talked about community upbringing, community schooling, community, watch men in the community. There are people in our community, children in the community, who when some children are going to school, they are probably out there playing football, hawking for their parents, being the breadwinner of their family without a basic education. We have lecturers who stay in this community with these children. What do you think can be done to reduce the number of out-of-school children we have in Nigeria?
Well, I think a lot of things have to be done. One of it must be cultural renaissance. I say cultural renaissance in the sense that growing up, the community was concerned about every child. A child was a child of the community, not only of the family it belonged to. But that seems to have died down. And that ensues from our culture. It wasn't an imported culture. It was a matter of our culture that believes in being one another's keeper. But as we think we embrace Western civilization, we get more isolated from one another because we copy Western civilization, whereas they envy our cultural, our culture of being one another's keeper. But we are, emulating their culture of being myself and myself alone. I think that is where the problem lies. If we begin to think of it, there is a way. If people cannot, the government should not only be in the formal school. I want to say, I told you last time that if I had not had a good basic something, I wouldn't be here. I also remember that in the 70s, the late Brigadier General Ogbemudia had what he did that, shut up Bender, the then Midwest and then Bender. Because what he did was to make sure that those who couldn't go to school at the normal time had government-sponsored evening classes. They call it Institute of Continuing Education. So they have their headquarters in Benin and branches in all the local government or zonal offices. And of course, teachers in the normal school were the one coming to teach people in this school in the evening. So it was an additional income for the teachers. And then it was an opportunity for those who couldn't. And at a point, because you pay monthly for those in secondary school. And I remember at a point, they also make it available for people who do not do anything in the morning, yet they can't afford to go to the normal secondary school. So you find that when we do such things, the neighborhood can have such and pay to ensure. Because as I will always said, if the children you refuse to educate today will be problem to your own children. And of course, we are seeing what we are seeing. They are not only problem to the children, they are problem to all of us. So if we find this, I believe that we are talking of community policing. Then we can also talk of community educating, where you have those things, they gather together in, my area around Makide like this, if we can, even it's big, you can have a few people landlord association can also take that kind of decision.
So it reduces the number of out-of-school children.
It will reduce the number. They can still go hawk and do this thing, but they have a time. You plead with their parents, they still come and do something. But that way, and government can also initiate it. There's nothing wrong about doing that. If you want to have peace, then you spend money on what will prevent peace. And that is what we did when I was director of Social Orientation Center in UI. It was an anti-cultism thing. When I took over, because I'm an evaluator, I evaluate and went around, and we discovered that it is not just the student. It is not just, even the lecturer, the other workers are also contributory, because the attitude had motivated some of the students to go in. And so we got in, we have a boostman, we have a lot of things, we have orientation for everybody, we're visiting faculty, from faculty to educating them, enlightening them on how we can relate. And it improved the thing. So such a way, we can also do something to help people, enlighten them why they should do this thing, why this thing. And that way, we will reduce insecurity. We will reduce crime. And we will produce, and when we do that, and now with this one, we can also do it to make it functional thing. As we are doing that, you still have opportunity for tailoring. Now, tailoring is even being offered at degree level. Bricklaying is being offered, they call it building technology, but it's being offered at degree level. And so, everybody, I think that is good. Because when we continue to do this, people will now know that no matter what you are doing, it is not a mean something. As long as you contribute to the development of the community, you are doing something reasonable.
All right, let's look at ASU now and the incessant strike we've had. Let me reel out some of the major strikes we've had in this country since 2009. In 2009, we had a 4-month strike. 2010, we had 5-month strike. In 2011, we had 2 months, Prof.
Yes, I know.
In 2013, we had 5.5 month strike. In 2017 and 2018, we had shorter strikes, which were for weeks, months, over unmet agreement also. In 2020, we had 9-month strike, which was the longest
including COVID.
Including COVID, yes. That's why I said 2020.
No, you didn't talk of the COVID.
I mean, no, the COVID parts came, and then ASU strike also came. COVID was not the reason for the strike.
But
COVID was just for stay at home.
Perhaps.
But eventually, ASU strike also came.
Yes.
And why, it was a 9-month strike.
Yes. Why I mentioned COVID? Because negotiation could not take place. And so, COVID contributed to the elongation. I wanted us to know because even all of us were at home.
And in 2025, we've also had strikes, warning strikes, talking of warning strike declared in October.
You didn't talk of 2022.
And I mentioned 2020. Oh, 2022,
2020.
yes. We had 8-month strike. We've had this number of strikes, and at every little disapproval, every little issue with the federal government, it seems ASU enjoys going on strike.
Yeah, that is wrong. It's a wrong perception.
Okay, please.
I want to tell you. Now, ordinarily, there are ways you try to, workers try to put their addition. But the Nigerian government from beginning, you just started 1992, 1992, 1996, and all those ones, they were strike. That 1996 affected me. 1992 affected me. And long strikes. But 1992 was the thing that brought tent fund. But having said that, there are ways that when you give notice, government allowed this strike to take place because we are not a productive people. If we are productive, they wouldn't allow it. I remember in 1989, I was in the UK, and the rail, they call it rail, the railway, was to go on strike. The government went and they ensured they never went on strike. They give notice. Here, you negotiate, you do things, they will begin to dilly-dally. Just imagine how will it take. You are talking, if the thing is effective from 2026, then it is the 17th year. Not just 6. They sign at the end of the 16th year, but beginning implementation from the 17th year. Why should it take that? For goodness sake. And even with those number of strikes, it is because we do not consider education a pivotal part of our development. It is also because we are not productive. Even not only this, NLC or whatever should not be allowed. I remember in 1981, when Shagari was in government, we were in this thing. When NLC talk of strike, the thing happened only one day, and the whole country shook. We cook because the workers went. That time we still eat from the cafeteria. So we have to make alternative plan to cook. For the general student went to cook. So what am I saying? But the thing lasted only one day. Before we know it, it was called off. Because the government acted promptly to prevent it. But after then, it's like people, even during that was NLC, even during that period, especially primary school students in many states of the Federation were not being paid their salary. Even with from 1999, I know at one time, Anambra State teachers were not paid for over 11 months. Why do you punish teachers, for goodness sake? And if ASU, many of the things, people are enjoying poly and all those things are enjoying. If you go everywhere, you see tent fund. If ASU had not fought, and if they had not gone on strike, those infrastructure wouldn't have been there. That is the fact. Many state governments established colleges of education and all, depending on tent fund to give them infrastructures. So those are product of those strikes. And I think as we look at the sitting at home and all those things, we should also look at what came out of it. What were the gains? The gains are for the whole people and not for us. In fact, there are many of those who fought during those times are out of the system. So it is not as if ASU delight. We don't. Even with that, when they are on strike, they send emissary to government. They do also, they lobby government to ensure that things go. I know, because I told you I'm an active member. I attend every meeting. So everything. ASU is one union I respect, because what they do, no secret. They come, everything. When they go for negotiation, they sleep together so that nobody can, penetrate into them and break their rank. That is why you see that their ranks are hardly breaking. You see that the man who formed Konua, formed it because he wanted to be ASU chairman and he didn't succeed. And so what you see that one is dead, is dead on arrival.
We will come to Konua. We'll talk about Konua after this break. Please stay with us.
Win up to 5 million naira and other exciting prizes in the Golden Morn Golden Hunt promo. Buy any 30-gram or 45-gram promo pack. Look inside for a unique code. Dial *8011*1#. Follow the prompts to enter your unique code to win big. Promo ends April 15th, 2026. Golden Morn. Make every day golden.
We are still talking about the renewed agreement between ASU and the federal government. And we want to look at Konua. With this agreement, where does Konua stand?
Well,
what's the position of Konua? Is Konua also captured in this agreement?
They are lecturers.
So they are captured in this agreement?
They are captured. They were just, you see, it was self-aggrandizement that led to, it wasn't patriotism.
But the agreement says ASU, not Konua. And I listened to the president of ASU. He says if Konua would be willing to come back into the fold, in his word, then they will be captured. But if not, it might not capture them.
No, but that is his own statement. The fact is that they are members of ASU. Whether they like it, they are an academic staff. They are just they are a group of rebels. And
who are no longer under ASU.
And
this agreement captures those under the association ASU.
I don't think so. Because when government is going to implement it, no university who will now be saying this is Konua person and ASU person. So but eventually, I believe, at the time, Ilorin was out of ASU for so many times. They were benefiting from whatever we did. But at the end of the day, they came to realize that it was better they came back to ASU. They had their own, they didn't, you see. So I believe that gradually, you see them, have you seen them made any noise? They are not making noise because they know they will benefit. The fact they knew that they were just rebels, because it was rebellion. How can you, if you contest for any position, it's either you win or you don't win. And you should be sportsman enough to wait for another time. But if you say, because of this I complain and they didn't attend my complaint to you, how many of them are even Konua? That is why even they are discountenance. Because, and the medical people, NAMDA or whatever, were just thinking that they shouldn't be out of course, in their own case, their own money is different. They have their consolidated salary. They also have other things they do. And of course, nobody stopped them from going to work at the teaching hospital because they are staff of the Ministry of Education they are also staff of the Ministry of Health, because teaching hospitals are under health. Yet, the teacher who are in the College of Medicine or College of Health Sciences are also staffed by extension of this thing, because they do consultancy there and they take their consultation fee. So it was just like, we are tired, why are these people disturbing us? But in the long run, all of them are aware that ASU was fighting for everyone. But you know, some people, once they have problem with one person or the other, they escalate it to become as if it was a problem between them and a community or something like that. That was the reason. I don't think anybody, by the time a university will say, the people who are in Konua, even if Konua does not die by proclamation, it will die a natural death, because those members will start coming back one after the other.
All right, let's look at the agreement now. We saw what happened in 2009 and how it's been pushed and the talks about it from 2009, 16, 17 years after. How do you think this administration, talking of ASU administration now, and the current federal government administration, how do you think ASU should begin to follow up with the federal government to make sure all the key points in the agreement are implemented?
Now, you see, the government, I believe, had committed itself by publicly, because one thing they said when we were there is that those agreements were not signed. And the reason is that the chairman of the negotiation committee was the one who signed, and with ASU, they signed on behalf of government and this thing. And they are now saying, but a minister of government now signed. And what they do, they sign every page anyway. And if a minister now sign, it means the government has signed. And I think if the government has the way, and of course, ASU doesn't leave, they come. So I'm sure that with the clause of some part being sourced internally, we make it easier for implementation.
Do you think this government is ready to implement all the features, the key points in the agreement?
That is why I'm saying that, you see, the government has been smart or clever enough to say, okay, this part will come from internally generated revenue. And that is an assurance that you go and fight. It will now be, if it is not paid, it will be the fight between ASU and the individual institutions, that part. And I'm sure the part government must have taken, careful analysis of that. But let me tell you that one of the reasons the agreement has been failing is the civil servants. So we just pray that the civil servants will not go and concoct another. But I think,
do you mean?
No, you see, when they had agreed and go, they now tell the right to tell them that this one is not implementable because of this and this. And then government, the politician now, because they are the one advising them. So even many of the problems we have are actually the problem of civil servant, top one, of course, that people don't know. They think it's all politician. The politician get their pieces of advice from those people because they are the, engine room that maintain the continuity of government. That is why they say government is a continuum. They are the one who will say, after all, you didn't sign the agreement. You understand? And they bring that. But I believe that this time around, government publicly signing is a way of committing itself.
Okay. Let's look at the agreement now, the key features that were signed, and federal government agreeing with ASU now. Under what circumstance would ASU say it's going on strike again?
Well, this, you are saying it, if they are not implemented, then it is a room for strike to take place. If they are
not implementing, which exactly? You know, we have a lot of kids.
Yes, now, but what is the agreement? The agreement is that all of these elements have become implementable and will be implemented from January 1, 2026. So there should be no reason whatsoever for government to renege on any of them. That is the truth, because agreement is agreement. If they don't, then there is a problem. But let me tell you, because the N allowance is tied, to extra duties you perform that are not components of the actual academic work, teaching, research, and community service. You are not HOD. You are not employed as an HOD. You are not employed as an exam coordinator. So if you have
those duties, those responsibilities.
Yes, because you are. Yes, because it takes more time. The time you ought to relax. I tell you, lecturers generally don't have relaxation time. That's why you see we die anyhow. Because you are in your house, you are working. Even now, the only thing that can stop you from working is electricity. Once you have electricity, you have to work, because you are going to deliver lecture elsewhere, public lecture. It's part of your community service. You are going to do research. You must do it, one, to improve the teaching, and also to impact it on others. Because many of the teaching methods and techniques we use are developed by research through other persons. And you also have to, even before you adopt it or adapt it, you have to do a research on it to see whether it is adaptable, whether it is culturally adaptable, and so on. So you work on. So those ones are not paid for, but you publish. Kata, we were talking of Kata the other time. Yes. You see, it's conference. It's part of conference, but you also pay for publication. And we are asked, you cannot get promoted if you don't have a number of international applications. And now they are talking of impact factor. They are talking of indexing of those journals. And it costs money. So these things we do from our own salary. And yet it is for the benefit of the system. So if they now, what they are even giving, I can tell you, is just maybe a third or a quarter of what you will spend in a year. But so if government would renege, it means they are not really looking for quality education, because conference, journal publication, and all those things are things that equip you to be able to improve the quality of education in your institution. And if research are well funded, they fabricate. Go to universities, either Faculty of Engineering or Technology. If you see, like mechanical engineering and then all those things, they fabricate things, they do things, they design things that ought to, people should come and buy a company or so and commercialize and then start producing. But they waste, because we are not interested, and yet we are interested in importing, and that is one of the things that is making the Naira useless. And people don't know. It's not just because of the, look at refinery, and somebody has been able to do this thing, and that is where you find that at least the thing comes down a little, go up a little, comes down a little, because there is a bit of competition, because somebody is now, but people are still fighting and want to be importing, because some few individuals gain from it. And then we push. That is one thing I am also fighting. When you talk of publication, why can't we make our journals international. What is making those want to do? Let's make it instead of just concentrating on. And that is the point until we begin to do certain things like take research seriously. And
that means institutions also have a lot of work to do.
Yes,
that.
yes. So, in fact, it's very painful that consultancy was not component of it. Government should contract their consultancy, if not all, as much as 50% to universities. And then they can earn money from there for the university, not for the individual. The individual will get an honorarium, but the university will get something out of it. And then this internally generated revenue will come, and some of the things. And then the question of autonomy. When you don't depend on government for everything, then autonomy will come.
Let's just say it's a gradual process.
Yes.
Development, agreement with the federal government. But with